recently I was reading through the book of Exodus. It seems like an unlikely place to find something about the friendships of women, but there was a verse in chapter 38 that really stood out to me, and I've read it many times, and I looked in another Bible I was using, and I hadn't highlighted that, I didn't see it before, but this is the verse from Exodus. I'll read it. He made the basin of bronze and its stand of bronze from the mirrors of the ministering or serving women who ministered in the entrance of the tent of meeting. So these women that were there, and the devotional I was reading to go along with it said the verb that was used, some translations say ministering, some say serving women. It indicates that this was an organized group, and it was probably the group because they had given something very costly to them. And I looked up in the ESV Study Bible, it talks about the mirrors would have been of good quality and made of highly polished pieces of bronze that most likely were brought from Egypt with them. But I wondered, who were these ministering or serving women? There's not really anything more said about them except that verse. And did they have friendships? Did they encourage one another? Their desire, obviously, was to serve and worship the Lord. And they were willing to give something very costly. I can't imagine there were other mirrors. There were no restrooms as they traveled in the desert. There wasn't any place that they could view how they looked except the mirrors that they had brought from Egypt. And it said they donated them. And it doesn't seem that there's any difficulty on their part or any hesitation on their part to give up these mirrors. And that's exactly what they did. In September, I had the opportunity to go back to Chicago, where I'm from, and be a part of a 40th anniversary of a church that we helped plant. And my husband was the pastor there for 30 years. And when our church began, we were like Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles 20. He's praying to the Lord and he says, on the verge of what seemed like sure defeat from the nation of Israel, we do not know what to do, he tells the Lord, but our eyes are on you. And that's really defined what our church was like in the beginning. We were very young, had no experience being involved in a church, but we saw what God did, and it encouraged us to press on. And really, what emerged from that group was a group of women who are, to this day, my closest friends. And they thought, they never looked back. They never counted the cost in the sense that they weren't willing to give what it took to serve the Lord in this community. And unlike the women in Exodus 38, who were all Hebrew, they were all Hebrew slaves, they had that common bond. We did not have that. We were from different races, different ethnicities. The majority were Hispanic. Some were African American. Some were Caucasian. Some traced their ancestry to Eastern or Western Europe. So this is our group, but the common bond that we had was Christ. That was the thing that we had together and that drew us together. In the 4 years that I've been involved with MOPS as a mentor mom, I've observed that there have been many friendships that have, I can't look over there. And, initially, it's the fact that you're all moms that brought you together. But really, it's the bond in Christ that you have that has really been the thing. There's a verse in Psalm 68:11. And some people think this may be referring back, it's the only other place, except a not very pleasant place, dealing with Eli's sons and what was happening to these women. But this perhaps may be referring to this group of women who served at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And it said, the Lord gives the word, the women who announce the news are a great host. So I'm thinking that this basin where Aaron and his sons would wash up was a big thing. It was no small little wash stand. So there had to be a lot of women who donated this bronze, and there was a lot of that they brought with, of gold, of silver, but there had to be a lot of mirrors to make up this basin. And I've seen firsthand how the friendships of women can impact the church, the community, the nation, and ultimately the world. In the book of Titus, the Apostle Paul, writing to this young pastor, repeatedly uses the word good and good works. Older women are to teach the younger women what is good. The older women are to show themselves models of good works. Jesus' redemption was to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession who are zealous, again, for good works. Believers are to be ready for every good work. Those who have believed in God may be careful to devote themselves to good works. And there's only 3 chapters in that book, so these are all the references. And lastly, Paul says to Titus, let our people learn to devote themselves to loving good works so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful. And these good works that Paul is encouraging them flow from our relationship with Christ, the one who loved us and died for us. And you have a sisterhood here. Diane and I always talk about how much we wished when we were bringing up our children that we had this, I look over this, and that we had this kind of a sisterhood to be a part of. And it's a wonderful thing, and it's what God intended. We need each other. As young moms, as older moms, we need each other. And that's why this community here is so important. And God has brought you all together, and he desires, I believe, for you to thrive. And that's the purpose of us being together. So